and it's easy for me to be optimistic because I'm around people creating passion projects all day. So I see people full of enthusiasm making things, and when they get frustrated, it's because it's hard. Making content is hard, but that's the kind of challenge that they're excited about. That's the kind of challenge that they're eager to overcome.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. This is episode 36. Lucky 36. I am your host, Chris, joined as always by Baby Girl, who's in my lap, Pumpkin, who is over there. And every week we bring you a special guest. This week's guest is more specialer than the last. Ross, welcome back to the show.
Chris, thanks for having me back on the program. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I know you're a busy boy. But we had some interesting legal things to talk about, so I wanted to kind of bring you on.
Absolutely.
But before we get into that, how are you doing? How you been?
I'm doing well. We're getting to the end of summer, which means back to school time, which is always busy for lawyers and academics and everybody in both of our circles. So Lots of good things in the pipeline that I know we've been teasing.
Well, you're a professor or an adjunct, I guess, at DePaul.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I teach in the Center for Digital Media, classes in business law, video game law, and presentation public speaking, and a couple other things for our creative professionals.
Nice. How long have you been doing that? It's been a while, right?
Oh, it's been a bit. I think we're in the neighborhood of 8 years now.
Okay. So yeah, that's about the same time I've been doing Columbus State. I started 2015, fall of 2015, I think, and that. Mm-hmm. So, time, man, it's moving.
It flies. I feel like I lost 5 years here somewhere. But,
yeah, absolutely.
It's all good things, so I must be having fun.
Yeah. You're living, I think. I don't know.
Trying.
Awesome. Well, we got some exciting stuff to talk about. Before we dig too far into that, though, let me remind our lovely viewers, if I can't tell if I'm having internet or some sort of slowdown issue, so we're just going to roll with it until the world explodes. And looks like this didn't properly reset either, so give me a second. Merp. I don't know why these things happen. There we go, look at that. Beautiful lock. I wonder if I somehow changed settings on something, but anyway, we got GDEX. GDEX is coming up. We did a little refresh on our webpage. We're adding more information this week and early next week, so we'll be getting a lot of things like schedules in. We've got our tournaments down here. We got a lot of fun stuff for our tournaments, and so I think we've got a really exciting show this year. We just need now to spread the word and have people come and be excited about it. So I just wanted to remind everybody, www.thegdex.com. We've got some, I probably got 20 speaking sessions right now I need to go through, but we got some exciting stuff this year, including, like I said, the tournaments, but then our Dev Day is being sponsored by Unity this year. So we got Unity to come back. They're going to hopefully send a couple speakers. We're still working out the details. Talking about some of the cool new features for developers for our Dev Day. So that will be exciting. That week's going to be a busy week because in addition to GDEX, you and I have some Shiny State Games Conference stuff. And then the week after that is the Shiny State Games Conference. And then the weekend after that is MDev. So we have a busy fall here, Ross. Are we going to be able to handle it?
We're going to do our best. We're just playing this on Legendary difficulty mode this fall, but it's very exciting because we've got a lot of great events coming up in the Midwest, a lot of different folks, and I'm just looking forward to kind of seeing people I haven't seen in 5 years. It's going to be nice.
Yeah, I'll be on the show. I'll let people know about all the cool stuff like GDEX and everything that's GDEX, MDev, and Shiny State Games Conference that's coming up. But it's going to be some busy times all around. All right, you ready to get into it?
Let's dive in.
All right, first article, gamesindustry.biz. What are the legal risks of using generative AI in games development? This is an article by Andrew Velzen, who's a contributor. Uh, Let's see. Many of this year's biggest game developer events, including GC, have been awash with companies touting the use of Gen AI for creating dozens of maps, levels, improved development workflows, performing QA tasks, or even responding directly to in-game actions from a player. Additionally, big industry players are actively developing hardware to support the use of Gen AI, such as NVIDIA's unveiling of their new Super Series of GPUs at the start of the year. So, Ross, AI keeps coming back at us. I feel like you bring this up every year at GDEX a little bit. You talk about AI, but for some reason, there's just something in the air this year that is, I don't know if it's hype or marketing or what, but why do you think AI is such a big deal this year?
It does seem to be everywhere, and depending what week it is, I can't tell if the interest is coming from a grassroots bottom up or if it's a top down. Like, I don't know if this is something that people are asking for and companies are providing it to us because it's a service or a product that we need, or on the other hand, if this is something they've all invented and they're trying to convince us that it's something we should implement in our workflows. I've seen it coming from both directions, but I do think that this year it's been a lot louder. We've been hearing about AI is not new. AI is decades old, but it really seems like the last couple of years this has been a major topic of conversation, and especially on the legal front, because I think it's just being applied in new and different ways. It's not as simple as maybe predictive text in texting, which is one of the versions of AI that I think a lot of non-gamers are familiar with. It's just your phone helping you out writing something, or going back to the 90s with Clippy, noticing you're writing a letter and suggesting templates or giving you other prompts. I think
Oh yeah,
in gaming
Clippy.
it's
Clippy was
it's
excellent. Always worked right.
so good, so perfect. I think that it's coming up in a big bad way, especially in indie circles, smaller circles, because it's offering us an opportunity to make things faster and make things cheaper, potentially with less human input. So we can procedurally generate levels, we can create new maps, we can offload some of the more tedious tasks of coding or content creation to programs that are making very high quality content. But on the other hand, with every push, there's a pull. I think there's an equal and opposite reaction of people pushing back against this technology because there are lots of moral concerns about what kind of content we're using to make and what kind of people we might be replacing who make that content. So using AI to generate art instead of hiring original artists and commissioning new things, hiring AI to write our scripts for us, write our dialogue for us, do things that normally creative people have really excelled at, really made a name for themselves doing. So I think that's why this continues to be a hot topic in the media. Is we've got loud voices and strong feelings on both sides, and then of course lawyers get in there and mess everything up. So I know most of the conversations I have are about legally, can we do this? Are we stepping on someone's toes? Are we borrowing? Are we sourcing? Are we training AI used on creative content that we have rights to or don't have rights to? And how do we use this shiny new toy ethically? Is a lot of the conversations I've been having lately. So it's sticking around.
Okay. So how do we do all that?
How do we do it? How do we fix it? That's the hard part, right? So I think we're getting to a point now where we're training up our technology pretty good. It's pretty good at what it's doing. We just have to make sure that our
Do you think
application,
it
our
is?
usage of the technology is good.
Do you think it is good? Do you use AI tools in any way in your day-to-day goings on?
I have been playing with it quite a bit, and the two contexts I've been using it in, I've played with things like Midjourney to see how easy is it to create some art, some new art based on a list of terms and connectors and new prompts. How original is that art that comes out? And just to my non-artist layman's eyes, can I go back to an internet search and find some source material from somewhere? Can I find what trained this AI? That's something that I've been toying with, and I think at this point that technology is getting to be fairly seamless. There's art that you can create with AI where it's very hard to find source material for it that led to it. On the other hand, when my students hand me term papers that are written with ChatGPT, I can spot that AI a mile away because folks are using vocabulary, sentence structure, or ideas that they've never expressed to me before. All of a sudden, they're an expert in something brand new. So I
What's
think
your
some AI is really leading the charge, some is not.
do you have a class policy for AI use?
If I can tell this is AI, you're in a world of hurt. So, and it's not one of those things where, they say good writers, borrow, or plagiarists borrow from one source, and great writers just steal from many sources. If I can tell you've lifted a paper wholesale, that's one thing. But if your paper is just scattered with so many different sources that it becomes an incoherent mess of babble, that's AI. So some work, some don't.
Yeah, I have a pretty hard. I have a thing in my syllabus now, but if I catch you using AI to work on your essays, I just instantly fail you. I have a very hard like the cleaver comes down kind of thing on it. And some of it's like that my assignments aren't very hard, like what's your favorite video game company, and then others is you're creating a game design document. So like, what are you AIing? It's supposed to be your idea on to paper. But yeah, I've gotten some bad papers. Not very many, but I've gotten a couple bad papers that are just like absolutely. I was just like, where are your sources for this? This information is all wrong. It sounds like you're a crazy person. And yeah, I am. I feel. I personally am kind of weird because I'm at the cutting edge of technology, but I'm also like a curmudgeon when it comes to sometimes new tech, and that's how I'm kind of feeling about AI right now. Because as a high level, I'm totally fine with AI coming in and replacing all like the mundane nonsense work that we should be like. That's sort of the Star Trekian dream, right? That we can then spend time on ourselves, developing ourselves, learning and whatever. But that never seems to be the case, does it? It seems like we develop a new tool and then that tool gets used in a more or less exploitative way that just requires us having to deal with more bullshit. And that's kind of where I'm wondering is like, are we really, is AI going to create this world where like it unlocks our potential, or is it going to become where just like everything is like a hot mess of garbage? And unfortunately, maybe I'm being too cynical. I don't want to be cynical. Roth, save me. Pull me back from the brink.
I know, like me, you're a big fan of science fiction, both in our words, our written, books, and our video games as well. And in all of these conversations about AI, I find myself going back to some of the classics like Blade Runner or iRobot, and seeing what folks had to say about evolutions in new technology at that time. And it just reminds me a lot of the Will Smith adaptation of iRobot, where he's talking with Sonny and asking him, can a robot paint a painting or conduct a symphony or create something beautiful and new? And this robot looks back at Will Smith and says, can you? And I always found that kind of philosophical, because I think AI is enabling a lot of folks to create new creative content that maybe they never would have been able to create before. It's AI enhanced, whether it's a tweet or a LinkedIn post or a full game design document. It has the potential to help people polish, enhance, and improve their work. And in those contexts, I think morally that's fine. What I encounter more often with students and people just breaking in, though, maybe, is when they're hoping this AI is going to be a replacement for themselves or for other people, and then it gets a little bit dicey. It shouldn't stand on its own. It should be used to enhance some creative spark that's already there.
Yeah, so that's sort of in line. Chris Totten, who is on the show, who we kind of got in a conversation because him and I sort of see things a little bit differently, but maybe not that much. Where one of his comments was that, similar to what you just said, is that art is a way for like people to express themselves to others. And if you're using a machine that doesn't have it has no feeling, it has no caring, it's not trying to get anything across to you, then it's not really art. I'm paraphrasing his comments a little bit, so go back and watch the old video if you want. But I'm not sure that's true. Like, I think that the art is more on the side of the audience, right? Like, it's what they're experiencing, what they're seeing is what kind of constitutes the art. Now, that's not saying that I don't think that artists and creatives should be making stuff. I think the world's a much better place when like you're not just creating surface level nonsense to try to evoke feelings in people, right? That there's actually meaning there and there's thought behind it and there maybe is multiple interpretations. But that's sort of the larger aspect of creatives, right? Like when a lot of people talk about AI outside of the gaming space, the creative space, it's very, can we replace, our billing department to, handle, to facilitate payments, right? If we can get rid of 250 people that we don't have to pay. And that's really big. You don't really think about that, but I was listening to this interesting podcast, interesting to me, about the healthcare industry and how for 40 years we've pretty much refused to ever fix the healthcare industry in any meaningful way. And I forget what the number is, but it was something like the government spends like $60 billion a year just on billing. And the only reason that expense exists is because we have all these disparate healthcare systems that all bill different ways, collect payments in different ways, negotiate with the government in different ways. It's completely unnecessary costs. So like, yeah, man, AI that up. I'm down. Of course, those
Right.
those
I know just with my own law practice, implementing firm management software as a solo practitioner has made my life so much easier because I can generate invoices based off of, time entries and automate sending emails. And that's given me hours of time back in my workflow so that I can take on more clients and do more interesting things.
totally.
So that technology is wonderful for me, but at the same time, it doesn't have that human touch, which is so important in so many different workflows, including billing, something that, my experience has not been particularly sexy or fun, but it doesn't have that human soft touch to send a kindly worded email to someone who hasn't paid a bill yet and say, hi, I haven't, heard from you, or you have an outstanding balance. My AI is not so good at the soft touch.
Hmm.
It is a very blunt tool.
It doesn't send it won't send a gif of Ving Rhames with a pipe standing there just going like this.
Not yet, but someone needs to develop that technology, and I'm sure after today we've given someone an idea.
Yeah. Is Ving Rhames, wait, did he die recently? Did I just R.I.P. Ving
I'm not
Rhames?
sure. The chat knows.
Yeah, is Ving Rhames still alive? I can't remember. Yeah, but I think that goes to the larger. So you're talking about it from a business perspective there, but that also goes to the larger conversation I was asking about, which is all those mundane, rudimentary tasks that then can theoretically open your life. The reason I'm so down on this is, one, I've seen the evolution of the internet and how terrible it's become in many, many ways since its inception, where it was this super exciting piece of technology that could like bind us together. And like, remember when we were never going to have to worry about false information before because we had everything you'd ever want to know at our fingertips, right? And now the internet has just become this giant dissemination device for nonsense BS. So that kind of stuff. But I guess I'm more like, will we, if we create this AI utopia, will we as humans spend the time bettering ourselves? Or will that just become like another thing? Like work sucks, right? I think everybody's like, work is work. But like having meaning, going to work, accomplishing things, interacting with people, being social, which is something I don't get as much because we're all remote now, right? You take that all away and give people like 2, 3, 4 extra hours in their day. I do have a concern that it might be spent. I mean, it's their time to spend how they want, but it probably won't be spent in the healthiest way for us. And so it sounds weird because I'm not advocating that like we should work until the day we die because otherwise we'll be idle hands, will be the devil's plaything. But I think that there is a reality where we've become so dependent on work as our sort of measure of value in ourselves, right? Even just something like, how much do you make? What's your salary? Like,
At least in this country, that's something I'm finding out is distinctly American as I interact with more folks from overseas, is that it's a very American cultural stance that we are defined by our work. We're defined by our title. What does he do? What is your job? What is your role? Like that. That's something we identify on, and that's so important that when I see folks introduce themselves to strangers and they don't use their job, their title, their role, or their workflow as a way to identify, it breaks some people's brains. If they'll say like, so what do you do? It's like, well, I relax. I enjoy tennis. I like going outside. I like watching movies. Like, yeah, but what do you do? Well, I do a lot of other things too. I spend time with family. Like if you don't give them the job, somehow they feel like you're cheating conversation.
Sure.
And that's,
well, how else am I supposed to judge you, Ross?
I'm going to give you so many different ways. That's the easiest job there is. Don't worry.
So let's go back to this article then, which is written by a lawyer, one of your ilk. So what are these? And I know you're going to kind of have some of these conversations both at our accelerator program, which is starting in like 4 days. My God. But also at GDEX. But I mean, what are these legal things? I know people talk kind of loosely about IP protections and a lot of the generative AI as part of their learning process kind of just it just sucks up art from the internet and then attempts to turn it into something. So my question is like, what are the things that we should be looking out for? And why does every person in AI art have 6 fingers? Riddle me that.
It's for so many reasons. I'm going to oversimplify this because I know there might be some AI experts who are going to back check me on this. But the way that I kind of explain this to folks is a lot of the AI that I've experienced is kind of like a vacuum that sucks up a lot of creative content and then spits it out the other side into something new, air quotes. And it's sourcing this content and putting it together in new configurations. That's great. AI is very dumb, though. It doesn't know the difference between something that's new and creative, and it doesn't pick up on those distinguishable characteristics that make up so much creative content, like the 6 fingers example that you point to. So I think where I hope we're going is that as people become more cognizant of these issues, we start putting in protections to replicate our moral stances on a lot of these things, the way we have in other legal issues. One of the biggest things I say in my practice all the time is that law is reactive too often. Where there is a situation, there's a new rule to be made to govern behavior. Something bad has to happen before we're proactively writing a law about it, or reactively, I should say. So you can look at the way we've handled privacy, cookies, and GDPR in the last couple of years, kind of as a model for what might happen with AI. We decided that it was a breach of our privacy, that a lot of websites were tracking our habits, our clicks, our spending, and using that to replicate ads. So the American public in particular was upset about their privacy being breached in certain ways. And we have privacy laws being enforced, being enacted because of that. So now if you visit your favorite websites, you have to click agree to certain cookies and other trackers
which
visit that site.
So can I jump in?
Which drives more usable.
Yeah, it drives me from a
functional.
design standpoint and a functionality standpoint. It drives me frigging mad. Because now,
but I still have hope, because eventually, like, all we need is another program to streamline that process to make it more elegant. But from a privacy perspective, you're more protected now than you were before.
Yeah, I would like
legally
to.
It's good. Aesthetically,
I would like to see the details on that. So first of all, I think just in general, like, you don't go to lawyers to make things easy and simple, right? Like, so your entire profession is based around being a pain in the ass. That's kind of what you guys do.
I mean, I know that's in our operating manual. That's our first MO.
Yeah. I don't know if it's number 1, but it's definitely a chapter in there, right? And so that's always like, a part of it. Like, I mean, dude, sometimes like opening medication bottles or whatever is like maddening, and they're creating these ways to like protect people, and I get that, right? I totally get that. Real fast, just for fun, before I continue on here, just in the time we've been speaking, I have received an email from Masterclass titled, "Are you ready?" This is just a general boost your skills with Gen AI and get 50% off of Masterclass. While we are sitting here,
they're listening right now, so be careful. You want to make sure you're on the right team when the tech war starts.
And then something, I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but I heard this the other day. But you remember in The Matrix when Neo goes and meets the Oracle, and he's in her kitchen. The first thing she kind of does is she's sort of like, "Do you want a cookie?" And like, I don't think that has anything to do with internet cookies, but it's kind of an interesting thing that's just like he has to accept the cookie before he can like begin to receive the information that he might be the one or whatever. It was probably just a total happenstance thing, but it's kind of interesting how she's making cookies and offers him one of which he chooses to accept, right?
See, now that you say that, I'm afraid you're going to start your own religion based around this. First you have to accept the cookie, and you have to live by the cookie, or you die by the cookie.
Oh, dude, if there was a religion that offered me free cookies, I mean, I'd probably
Sign
show
me
up.
up.
I'd probably at least show up for like a dinner or something, right? A fish fry or something. But yeah, I think your general sense is like law is reactive, which in some ways is good. I guess it's in some ways. I love you guys. I love lawyers, but I also have a standoff relationship with lawyers because it's better now. But you guys were making a lot of lawyers and dentists and pharmacists. We talked about this the other day. Those schools, those professional schools, were just producing way too many people. And when those people didn't have anything to do, they had to start coming up with things to do so that you could, eat and live and such. And so I think having it be reactive is good in the sense that we're not creating changes in laws on things we don't truly understand, which I think is kind of where AI is right now. We don't really understand its potential. We don't really understand its downsides. But then on the proactive front, like, do you really need to step on a landmine before you can realize I probably shouldn't be walking in a
And
minefield?
I think we're getting a little bit of both. But
Okay.
I've noticed in this field that tech law comes slowly. We're only getting the privacy protections against things like Facebook, and you can look back at congressional testimony from Zuckerberg to see how on it some of our leaders are right now.
Can I ask you a side question? Do you,
Mhm.
just you personally, not you can bring in the law if you want to, but you personally, do you believe that your online data is yours or is it owned by Facebook? Like, who owns that data that's being created through these platforms in your mind? Not necessarily legal, but like, where would you want to see it?
Some data I feel like I own it, and some I don't think I have a whole lot of claim over. So I do get a little bit of the cringe when, after being online for about an hour and clicking around shopping on various websites, I start seeing ads for things I was looking at on websites I've never been to before.
Sure.
Like, that worries me a little bit, but effectively what that is, it's kind of this is something we talked about ad nauseum in law school for privacy rights, but it's kind of the equivalent of, imagine if you went to Target or Walmart and you were doing your shopping and someone just followed you with a clipboard and wrote down everything you touched, looked at, or were interested in, and then later took that and sold it to somebody else to create a profile for you for selling stuff. That would really creep you out. You would be very weirded out by it, and you would feel like your privacy rights were threatened. But that's effectively what happens to us every time we go online. So I feel that that's something that Facebook would own, that Meta would own, that I would disagree with. But generally, if I'm uploading, pictures to my Facebook or to my Twitter from my vacation or from my wedding or something else that I care about, I know that I own the copyright in those things, but I'm also giving an implied license to whatever platform I'm uploading them on to share them, disseminate them, and put them places. I don't think they own them, but they might disagree. So it's one of those, I think the conversation has to happen because we've never thought of it before. I think a lot of people have to come to some kind of consensus or negotiation with platform providers and say, these are things we want to own, these are things that we are fine sharing, and here's how and where you can't use them. And that's, to bring it back to AI, AI is training on content that has been uploaded to the internet in various places. And sometimes that it's implied that that's okay, and sometimes artists feel that it's not. So all of the preliminary lawsuits we're starting to see against AI makers for sourcing or training AI on content that artists did not approve is part of that conversation. Artists feel that content is theirs, it's private, it's not something that should be trained with, something that should be borrowed from, and we're getting that pushback. So my hope is that 5 to 10 years from now, we'll have, in addition to new policies on likeness rights and more privacy protections, we'll also have some AI ones that says, you need explicit permission if you're going to be training software on any content that's uploaded to a third-party site.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I find this really interesting because you're right. Like, and I think this is one of the spaces where AI, and I'm using AI very broadly here, but like, you go and you look up something on a website, and then the next thing you know, like you said, you're seeing like Facebook's got ads and whatever, which I think is interesting because that AI, it's like about as stupid as you can get, right? It's like, you looked at this, so I'm going to send you a whole bunch of stuff on this, right? But like sometimes it's like, hey, I went to Amazon and I bought, like, I need to buy some bed sheets, right? So I'm going to go buy bed sheets, and then I'm for like a week afterwards I'm going to get all these ads about bed sheets, but it's like I already bought the bed sheets. I don't need them anymore. A lot of people use wedding dresses as one where it's just like I only need one wedding
Sure.
dress, right? And so I do think it's kind of interesting that way where it's just it really is creating like this dumb profile of you and what your needs are. And this is illustrated again to me time and time again, both on Facebook, which is becoming. Do you know? I'm gonna rant. Facebook has promoted ads in your notifications section now. When you log in and it's like, hey,
Yeah.
people sent you messages or whatever. There's now promoted ads in your notification. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Anyway, but I also think that the larger sense of your data is interesting because I'm coming from the healthcare space, right? And you have your HIPAA protected data, all your personal health data, all that stuff. I mean, there's certain things like your name and stuff like that's not protected information. But then what's connected to it around your health and stuff is, right? And you own that data. Like a platform, you go to McKesson or Epic or whatever, and you ask for your medical records. Like they, by law, have to give you your medical records. Like they can't just, and that includes doctors' notes, which is a change in how things used to be because the doctors used to view their notes about you as their private information, and so you wouldn't be allowed to see that. You're like, well, what are you writing on my medical record? Back when it was like pen and paper, right? Like I can see you are writing something. What are you writing? And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm like, what do you mean don't worry about it? Like, this is my medical record. And I know people have talked about creating a universal online kind of profile of which information you control. I don't see that happening anytime in the near future. Like, and I feel like that's just a hacker's dream if they could broach
Oh,
that
that scares
system.
the hell out of me. Well, exactly. That's my first concern is how do you keep that secret and keep that safe and what information is in there and who has access to it and what
Yeah.
control do I have over it?
Obviously,
And
you'd have to encrypt it and everything. But because I share that, I was like, oh my God, I don't want like a centralized repository for it. But then I'm like, the dark web already has that. Like, there are places that already have they know your address, your phone number, your email addresses, your social security number. They know your mother's maiden name. They know your favorite color. They may not be 100% accurate, but like those databases already exist. And so it's kind of like we're fighting against the darkness here. And the reason this has to do with AI is because a lot of this stuff is just scraped off the internet, right? Just generative algorithms that just grab your info or whatever. So yeah, we're in a wild place as far as that goes. My question, I guess, bringing it back to sort of the article and what we do for a living, is how can we use this stuff? So let me give you an example. I told you if anybody uses AI in my class, I fail them. The only exception I give them is if they're using it to generate art assets for their game design document. And the reason I say that is because game design documents, this is obviously a class, right? It's unlikely that anything they make in this class will actually become a product at some
an academic
stage.
use, not a commercial use.
Yeah. But even outside of that, game design documents are internal products generally. Like you might share it with a publisher or something, and it's not uncommon to grab images from the internet, concept art. If you're making like a Metroidvania style game, you might steal some Metroid or Castlevania assets. And everybody that's looking at the game design document understands, if it's properly cited, that this is not your work. You are using this to create the vibe so that people understand the direction you're trying to go. So I allow my students to use things like Midjourney as long as it's properly sourced and cited to create those those vibe pieces, if you will. So that's kind of the only place I allow it. But for us in studios, I mean, what can we do? Where are we at? How do we create something that's useful while still not being exploitative? That's not going to get us into trouble with the law, with the man coming down at us.
Sometimes you can do everything right and you can still run into trouble. I agree that a great place for AI art is in placeholder assets. In internal documents and game design documents, or in early builds and alphas. That's where I see a lot of my clients using placeholder assets and AI generated stuff. It's a great place to put it. My advice to them is always just make sure you have a up-to-date log of where that content is so that you can make sure to pull it before you release it anywhere, because there's nothing worse than making a simple mistake and leaving some holdover assets somewhere that you don't have.
A lot of companies, development studios, they'll do like pinking, where they'll take the asset and then they color shift it so it's like pinkish purple, so it visually stands out. So when you see it, you know that, okay, this is a placeholder asset. But yeah, totally. I talked to my class the other day. I'm sure you've talked about this in your law class, when Blizzard got in trouble. Was that like last year or 2 years ago, for stealing that character design for Overwatch 2? And yeah, I mean, you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar business, right? That wasn't generative AI, but that was a concept artist who just pretty much straight up took a thing. Now, I don't recall if that was like a mistake, like that character artist was using that as a reference, and then again, it didn't get properly cited, and then it ended up working its way up the chain, and nobody knew that this had come from an external source.
One of the things that makes AI so tricky, from a legal perspective as well, is trying to draw some line between what is inspiration and what is copying, because this is an issue that I've seen in a variety of different contexts, and it's getting even more complicated with AI now. But as an artist, you're inspired by things around you, by real world events, by real world people, and all of those things get filtered into your art somehow. So you might say, in a game like Grand Theft Auto, you might be inspired by world events and real world characters, and you're like, I want a celebrity type character, some kind of diva, some kind of party girl character, and you're going to draw influences from Lindsay Lohan, or maybe aesthetics from Kate Upton, or a variety of other different characters, and all of those things inspire you to a certain degree, and you end up with a new product, a new character that is inspired, visually reminiscent but legally distinct, one way or another.
Yeah, wasn't the original Ellie in The Last of Us, wasn't that based on
not Elliot Page? So that was a big conversation for a long time, was it Elliot Page? And it was based on something completely different. Okay. But they look very similar. So the end result is very similar, but the influences they had to demonstrate.
I mean, they say things like in music, right? Like the joke is like there's only 4 chords, right? Like everyone's playing the same 4 chords over and over again in just different ways with different strumming. And so at some point, you only got so many people with we have 8 billion people on the planet. You make anybody, it's going to look like somebody else, probably.
Great minds think alike. And it's one of those things where, at least if it's a human doing the creation, doing the creating here, they can at least demonstrate their process. They can say, no, I didn't copy that.
Show your work.
By this and that and the other thing, and you can see how we got there. You can show your math. Ironically enough, if you're using AI, you can't necessarily show your math that way. It's harder to find what things are sourced and where things come from. So that authorship is a very tricky thing to demonstrate, but both personally and legally, which is this whole thing. And I'm seeing this come up often with AI now, where people are trying to figure out, is this influenced by, is this inspired by, and to what degree is AI just like us, taking inspiration from things? And when does that inspiration blur into imitation, and when does imitation blur into just outright copying and theft? And it's a very nuanced kind of case by case thing we have to figure out, and it's not easy. Which is my lawyer answer, is we'll get there eventually, but we need more case studies. And you can always you can do everything right in theory and still make a mistake. I always give the best advice I can to my clients about their due diligence, where you're going to research where your content comes from, you're going to implement the best practices you can. You're going to try and get the right licenses, try and get the right permissions, try and get the right waivers or assignments, whatever paperwork you can throw at it. but it's only as good as the people you're working with, and people lie. There's always instances where people think they own something and are giving permission to use it, but they really don't own it. And, it's a collaborative process, and collaborative processes are messy.
Yeah, indeed, man. All right. Well, we are going to talk a lot about AI. Join us at GDEX to learn more about AI. But I want to move on just because we're getting a little tight on time, if that's okay with you. So, along these things, you and I are involved in a variety of stuff in the gaming space. I was about to click the button and end the call. That is not the button I want to click. This is the button I want to click. So this is another GameIndustry.biz. The state of games publishing, the era of generalist indie publisher is over. This is a really good article. We'll post it in the thing. It's pretty long, so I'm not going to go over all of it. But this article combined with this article, another GamesIndustry.biz, where the Among Us folks are creating a small kind of indie fund to help people be successful and to get games out there, because it's just so hard right now to get your game published. It's just really, really difficult. And you and I are working on the Shawnee State Games Accelerator specifically to help companies build studios and get their games out there. But it's really, really hard right now to get any kind of funding from publishers, and their requirements are, you practically have to have like a, not only an MVP, but it's almost like you got to be like 70% the way done with production before these publishers will even talk to you. So I'm curious, we've had this conversation a lot, and I always like to pick your brain when I have you on here about how we can kind of restructure the publishing world for video games to help support these smaller studios and help them get out there and be successful. And, we're doing things obviously at the Shawnee State Accelerator. But what is just your take on kind of the world we're living in? What's it going to look like over the next few years? I'm hoping that we've gotten out of the really difficult part of the layoffs and such for the industry, but I don't know. What's the next 3, 4, 5 years going to look like?
Oh, well, I don't know what the next 3 or 4 years are going to look like, but I know the role of publishers, at least in regard to indie games, has changed so much in the last 5 years, the last 10 years, the last 20 years. And I've got indie clients who will swear that the whole point of being an indie game developer is not working with a publisher. That's what indie means, is not having those kind of folks around. Publishers that I've worked with great ones, and I've worked with ones that I hesitate to call publishers who I never want to see again. So the good publishers that I see, if they are generalists, they wear many hats, and they're good at all the things that they do. So they are good marketers, they are good investors, they're good partners, they're good content creators themselves. So their role is, most of the time when I'm talking to my clients, they're saying, why do I need a publisher? What's the point? Or why should I give them 70% of our revenue for a certain time and then 30% for another time? It's, well, as much as you're an indie developer and you can create code and you can create art and you can create music and design and you can do all the creative things that go into your game, it is a very rare person who can do all of that well and also has the skill and time to manage a social media campaign, market a game, find investors, port things to particular platforms, and do all the biz dev that comes with games. So that's the role that publishers fill, is they're marketers, they're porters, they're business analysts, sometimes they're lawyers, accountants, investors, marketers. They do a variety of different things. And if they're good, they're still here. And I think what we're seeing, maybe with the demise of these generalist publishers, is people who thought they were good at it who aren't. They're finding out that they are not good at generally being good at all of the skills that I just mentioned. It's a long list. So sometimes maybe you're better off finding specialists and playing a man-to-man defense than playing zone. Sometimes it's better to have a dedicated marketer, dedicated attorney, dedicated investor than finding
Definitely a dedicated attorney. Do not be your own attorney.
No, because I've seen, with a generalist approach, sometimes some things slip through the cracks, and I often draw kind of a parallel between indie video game publishers and folks who start their own record labels. Maybe they know a lot about music. Maybe they're not great at performing music, so they figure I still want to be in the space, so I'm just going to start a record label and help other folks. And I feel like a lot of game publishers kind of meet that ilk. There are some folks who say, I love games, I've got lots of great ideas for games, I'm not good at making games, but I've got some seed money somewhere, or a rich uncle, or I've got a couple connections and a business degree that I'll share. I'm going to be a publisher. Those folks do not have the skill, resources, time, or attention span to do that job well. So I hope that those are the publishers that are disappearing that the article is mentioning. But the publishers that I do work with who know exactly what they're doing and are very good at what they do, I hope that they stick around for a long time because they're a very integral part to making games successful.
Yeah, I've seen this. Ross, I've been in this game a long time, and I've seen a lot of things, and it's very, very common to have even high tier AAA developers who know how to make a game. They've made some of the best games you can imagine, and they're like, we're going to start our own studio. And they know nothing about running a business. They know nothing about the marketing aspects. They're used to being in an environment where like all of those ancillary halo positions are covered. Like they need something from HR, go talk to the HR person. They need a document created, go talk to the lawyer, because the big AAA studios have all those people on staff. And so that foundation, that infrastructure is created for them to be successful in. But then when they need to create that infrastructure, they're just lost. They don't even know where to begin. And then what inevitably ends up happening, even if they become like, I guess am this person. Like I always joke that like I left healthcare to make video games. I spend 90% of my week not making video games. And sometimes it's even less than that because my job as the sort of president CEO is to keep the business moving. So oftentimes I will sort of offload a lot of my mental burden on a project over to Tom, who's our lead programmer, because he's facilitating building the actual framework for the game. And yeah, we'll have design sessions. I'll look over stuff. We'll have conversations. But I'm spending so much time just keeping the business moving and afloat that I don't have time to actually focus on any project, And I see that quite often in the game space where, there are some transferable skills in being like a division leader, for example. Like say you're an art director and you've got 20 people under you. Like those skills are transferable to running a business, but there's just a whole lot of other stuff you got to figure out. And when it comes to publishers, I agree, because we're in a publisher's market. It's even worse in the board game space. The board game publishing space is awful because they have all of the power. They have all of the control. And if you don't like their terms, then they'll just go to the next one because their inbox is filling up with potential projects. But you need somebody that can help. I mean, like look at Bungie, right? Bungie left Microsoft, created Destiny, and then teamed up with one of the largest publishers in the world, Activision, because Bungie knew that their strength was in development. And since they're coming off of Microsoft, it's probably not worth their time to rebuild a whole publishing framework for it. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the direction they went. And I mean, Destiny 2 seems the kids love it. But I really want to, and this is the drum I've been beating with all these efforts, whether it's GDEX or the Accelerator or the Sandbox Incubator or this show, is being able to help provide that pathway for small studios to be able to be successful. And the thing we're missing is funding, which goes back to our conversation that we've had a lot, which is this: there's not a lot of funding available. So it's really hard to get money from potential investors that can then be re-put into projects right now. Maybe that'll change. I mean, I'm hoping it changes. The economy is looking great. I mean, this economy right now is one of the best we've had in quite a long time. When interest rates come down and money becomes cheaper, that might open up some purse strings. So we'll see. But you're involved in this stuff, man. You're knee deep in it. Like, is the future bright? Am I off base here?
I think the future's bright. I think that things are going to get interesting. To kind of put a pin in some of the conversation we've had about different roles and what do publishers do. An analogy that I've been using for a while is, Imagine if you're a really good cook. You're a fantastic chef. You make delicious things. That doesn't make you a good farmer, and it doesn't make you a good restaurant owner, and it
That's the
doesn't
old
make you
Mitch Hedberg
good
joke,
grocery
right?
store. Yes, it is. Points for the obscure reference today. That's what it's like in game design. That's what it's like in game development. You can be a fantastic game designer, game developer, game maker. That doesn't make you a good talent scout for finding good people to work in your company. It doesn't make you a good business manager. It doesn't make you a good coordinator. It doesn't make you a smart, savvy investor, business person. So, knowing what your skills are and what your skills aren't is the first step that I'm always trying to encourage my clients to embrace. Being indie doesn't mean you got to do it all yourself. Find good people to collaborate with and benefit from their experience and offload some tasks, because time management is another thing that folks don't necessarily have.
Yeah.
Is the future bright for game development and financing? I think so. I think, life is messy. But what I'm encouraged to see is, because of some shifting consumer tastes and because of some changes in the way that things are financed and the available money out there, I'm excited to see video games mirror some successes that the film industry has, or learn from some examples in the film industry. Not every film needs to be a $300 million budget Marvel Universe film, and it doesn't have to make $300 million. We're starting to see a shift that some of the most successful movies, or movies that are so beloved, don't need big budgets. Let's tell different stories. Let's tell personal stories that don't necessarily rely on expense. Instead of making one movie that's worth $300 million, let's make 10 movies that are $30 million and see what happens, see what grabs people, see what gets them interested. Sure. Instead of having AAA games, let's make more indie games on smaller budgets. And I think this is a wonderful thing for publishers, because they can spread that money around on a lot of different projects. It's a safer investment strategy for them, and it helps a lot of indies get their shot. So I'm excited about this Among Us fund that's being mentioned, and we've seen other things like this before. This isn't the first iteration of an idea of a successful indie company wants to give back to other indies and spread some money around to make some more games move forward. It happens all the time, but it's worth mentioning because I want more publishers to hear and know about how dedicated, how brilliant, how passionate indie game developers are, and how little it really takes to help them make their dreams come true, how little it takes to make them go the distance. I've talked with investors, and they, depending which investors I'm talking to, if I'm talking to folks from film or finance industries, they don't get out of bed for anything that's under a set amount. I'll make up a number like $1 million. They're like, I don't invest in things that are less than, this much. I only, do big projects. And I try to tell them, you have to understand this is really advantageous for you because you're minimizing your risk. And some of these projects that could be so lucrative, that are so brilliant, that could go the distance, it takes so little money to actually change someone's life forever. I have clients who, if you gave them $5,000, it would make the difference between finishing their game and not finishing their game. It would make the difference between them staying in the business for another 5 years or going back to their day job. And publishers need to know that they can take very small amounts of money and make very big changes, and people are very appreciative of those small loans. It goes a long, long way. So my hope is that, as this publishing scape is changing, publishers don't try and pitch things with wrong expectations. If I have to hear one more time, oh, we're trying to find the next Minecraft, we're trying to find the next Roblox, we're trying to find the next Fortnite, and we're hoping that we're going to create this $100 million, multiple billion-dollar franchise, set your sights lower. Success is not hundreds of millions of dollars. Sometimes success is tens of thousands of dollars on $100 budget. And
sure.
That's what I'm very optimistic for in the future.
That's pretty much what we've been pushing, right? I think it's a very Midwestern kind of attitude. Like, our focus with the accelerator and the incubator has always been building sustainable businesses where you can make a product, you can sell that product, you make your money back, and then you have more money that can then be financing your second project, right? And yeah, a lot of publishers just don't, it's just not worth the paperwork for them to sign a $50,000 deal. They're like, but I agree. Even with the Minecraft, it's like, oh, we're trying to find another Minecraft. I was like, well, Minecraft wasn't Minecraft until it was Minecraft, it didn't start out. So it's like the projects, I understand, like, the project management and staying on top of all this stuff can be very time consuming. if you've got like 1,000 small projects as opposed to like 20 larger projects, it makes it harder to market it. I get all of that, right? But to your point, I think there's also a way where we can be spending, and I try to convince the city of Columbus this, is like for a fraction of what you're spending like on legal fees for some of these efforts, I could work on building you a new industry that could create hundreds of jobs and dozens of businesses here. And it's tech driven and it's cool and the kids like it. So yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that the future is bright and that we're gonna be okay.
That's my Midwest optimism talking. Why not?
Why not?
It doesn't have to be doom and gloom. You know, we can be optimistic because and it's easy for me to be optimistic because I'm around people creating passion projects all day. So I see people full of enthusiasm making things. And when they get frustrated, it's because it's hard. You know, making content is hard, but that's the kind of challenge that they're excited about. That's the kind of challenge that they're eager to overcome and ready to roll their sleeves up and solve. The problems that frustrate them are the ones that they can't solve themselves, or that the system is rigged somehow and it's hard to solve. So they would much rather solve a coding problem over weeks and months than they would go into a meeting and ask for money to fund something.
Sure.
So, you know, publishers work as hard as your clients, first of all, and take that off their shoulders. If you want to be the best publisher in America, that's all you have to do is do the job that no one else wants to do and make it easier for people to create things.
All right. Well, man, on that note, I think that's a good place to wrap it up for today. This has been episode 36 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. Every week we talk about the games industry, the latest trends impacting it. So this is an exciting episode. Ross, I always love you on the show. Thank you so much.
It's always so fun being here. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Bringing your great legal mind to the questions of our time. A reminder that GDEX is coming up at the end of October, so www.thegdex.com. You can sign up, you can apply to volunteer. We're still looking for some speakers and exhibitors if you want to be a part of it, so feel free to jump on there. Also remember the Sandbox.Space, where you can sign up for our weekly email list, which includes a link to this weekly podcast that is hosted on the YouTubes. Otherwise, thank you all for watching. It has been a lovely conversation, Mr. Ross. And this has been episode 36. So, reminder, next week's a normal week. We will have a couple wild weeks coming up where we may have to delay the show. My guess is, I don't know, maybe we'll do, I was going to say GDEX week we may have to, but maybe we can do a special pre-GDEX episode or something. I don't know. We'll think about it. But anyway, thank you all for watching. We appreciate you being here. On behalf of myself, Baby Girl, Pumpkin, and our guest Ross, we will see you next week.